He's got the whole world in his hands. He's got the whole wide world in his hands. He's got the whole world in his hands. He's got the whole world in his hands.
Welcome back again for second time. Let's see if this one actually goes through. Fuck you, you. Ooh, is it over 2 minutes yet? Yeah. Well, YouTube, I love you. I hate you. But we're still going to move on with my planned, not planned video, planned topic. So, what we can do first, we can listen to our great commander in chief and what he had to say today in Normandy, France, at the World War II Memorial, which we're going to go over some few veterans of World War II and Normandy invasion, D-Day, Operation Overlord, and see what they have to say about today or the events of June 6, 1944, as well as a walkthrough of the World War II Memorial Museum. All places I've been. Crazy.
The hour
I have not.
had nearly come.
Check it.
Monday, June 5th, 1944. The evil of Hitler's Third Reich was devastating the world. Nazi Germany had subjugated the once free nations of Europe.
What the fuck is that?
Through brute force, lies, and twisted ideology of racial superiority. Millions of Jews murdered in the Holocaust.
What's up, Phoenix?
Millions of others killed by bombs, bullets, bloody warfare. Hitler and those with him thought democracies were weak, that the future belonged to dictators. Here, on the coast of Normandy, the battle between freedom and tyranny would be joined. Here, on that June morning, the testing was at hand.
What day, Joe?
President Macron, Mrs. Macron, Secretary Austin, Secretary Blinken, distinguished guests. Most of all, our honored veterans.
Look at that pedophile right there on the left.
Who met that test at the ages, a test of ages to that moment, 80 years ago. 80 years ago today.
Let me guess, you were there, Joe.
On behalf of the American people, and as Commander-in-Chief, it's the highest honor to be able to salute you here in Normandy.
Better do it right.
Once more. All of you, God love you. Winston Churchill called what happened here, quote, the greatest, most complicated operation ever, end of quote. After years of planning, Operation Overlord was ready to launch just as soon as the weather turned. Across the choppy English Channel, the Supreme Commander of the Allies, Dwight D. Eisenhower, waited. The largest force ever of its kind, built by 12 nations. Men, guns, planes, naval craft of every description waited. The world, captive and free, waited. Finally, Eisenhower's forecasters said there was a window in the weather. It would open briefly on Tuesday, the 6th of June. The general weighed the options and gave the order. At dawn,
in the red doing in
the Allies would strike. The great crusade to free Europe from tyranny would begin. That night, General Eisenhower drove to the English town of Newbury to visit paratroopers of the 101st Airborne.
Air assault.
There were men from all over America. It was estimated that 80% of them would be killed within hours. That was the estimate. But they were brave, they were resolute, and they were ready. One soldier told General Eisenhower, quote, "Don't worry, sir. The 101st is on the job. Everything will be taken care of." That's what he said. And because of their courage and their resolve, because the courage and resolve of their allies, it was taken care of. From the sea and sky, nearly 160,000 Allied troops descended on Normandy. Many, to state the obvious, never came home. Many survived that longest day, kept on fighting for months until victory was finally won. And a few, a notable band of brothers, are here with us today. Kenneth Blaine Smith is here. On that day, under heavy artillery fire, he operated a rangefinder and radar on the first American ship to arrive at Normandy's coast, providing direct gunfire support for the Rangers scaling the cliffs of Pointe du Hoc.
There it is.
On their daring mission to take out the German batteries.
When you get to the top of the cliff,
Bob Gibson.
You can still see the craters of the impacts from the bombs and shit. Not bombs, whatever the fuck they used to use from the ships. And it's fucking insane.
Is here. He landed on Utah Beach about 10 hours after the invasion began. Bullets flying everywhere. Tracers lighting up the sky. Bob drove an M4 tractor with anti-aircraft gun mounted on top, providing critical protection for the infantry against the German Air Force. On that day, and for many days after, he continued. Ben Miller is here, a medic with the 82nd Airborne.
Damn right.
At 3 a.m. on June 6th, he and 13 other medics flew over the channel in a rickety glider. Its wings were ripped off by giant poles that the Germans buried halfway in the ground to stop them from landing. They crashed, but they survived. And they did their duty, dragging injured soldiers to safety, treating wounds, saving lives while the battle raged.
Damn right.
Every soldier who stormed the beach, who dropped by parachute or landed by glider,
Well, parachutes
every
can land on the
sailor
beach.
who manned the thousands of ships and landing craft, every aviator who destroyed German-controlled airfields, bridges, and railroads, all were backed by other brave Americans, including hundreds of thousands of people of color and women who courageously served despite unjust limitations on what they could do
Where'd the
for their
women
nation.
serve?
Lewis Brown is here, part of the Red Ball Express, a truck convoy made up of mostly African-American drivers.
Really?
They landed in Normandy in the wake of D-Day. They rushed supplies to the rapidly advancing front lines. Woody Woodhouse
Look
is
at that
here.
pedophile on the left.
Members of the legendary Tuskegee Airmen, who flew over 15,000 sorties during the war. Marjorie Stone is here. She enlisted in the women's branch of the Naval Reserve, became an aircraft mechanic, spent the war keeping American planes and pilots in the air. Theirs has always been the story of America. Just walk the rows of this cemetery as I have. Nearly 10,000 heroes buried side by side.
A lot of diversity in
Officers
that.
and enlisted, immigrants and native-born, different races, different faiths, but all Americans. All served with honor when America and the world needed them most. Millions back home did their part as well. From coast to coast, Americans found countless ways to pitch in. They understood our democracy is only as strong as all of us make it together. The men who fought here became heroes, not because they were the strongest or toughest or fiercest, although they were, but because they were given an audacious mission, knowing, every one of them knew, the probability of dying was real. But they did it anyway.
Oh, there we go. There's
They knew.
diversity.
Beyond any doubt, there are things that are worth fighting and dying for. Freedom is worth it. Democracy is worth it. America is worth it. The world is worth it. Then, now, and always. The war in Europe didn't end for another 11 months. But here, the tide turned in our favor. Here, we proved the forces of liberty are stronger than the forces of conquest.
Oh, look, they were
Here, we
cunt cat.
proved that the ideals of our democracy are stronger than any army or combination of armies in the entire world. We proved something else here as well, the unbreakable unity of the Allies. Here with us are men who served alongside the Americans that day, wearing different flags on their arms, but fighting with the same courage for the same purpose. What the Allies did together 80 years ago far surpassed anything we could have done on our own. It was a powerful illustration of how alliances, real alliances, make us stronger. A lesson that I pray we Americans never forget. Together we won the war. We rebuilt Europe, including our former enemies.
Actually, we didn't rebuild
It was
Europe.
an investment in what became shared and a prosperous future. We established NATO, the greatest military alliance in the history of the world. And over time, you got it, it is. And over time, we brought more nations into NATO, the NATO alliance, including the newest members, Finland
Don't say
and
anything about
Sweden.
Ukraine. This is about D-Day veterans. you stupid fuck.
Today, NATO stands at 32 countries strong, and NATO is more united than ever, and even more prepared to keep the peace, deter aggression, defend freedom all around the world.
You lost me a little bitch.
America
Lead
has
the way.
invested in our alliances and forged new ones, not simply out of altruism, but out of our own self-interest as well. America's unique ability to bring countries together is an undeniable source of our strength and our power. Isolationism was not the answer 80 years ago and is not the answer today. We know the dark forces that these heroes fought against 80 years ago. They never fade. Aggression and greed, the
Who
desire
would
to
have thought the
dominate
dark
and
forces
control.
they fought that many years ago? Wait. All those men who fought for those dark forces later on to realize that these dark forces are standing right in front of them. That's a motherfucker right there.
To change borders.
It's funny because you got all these World War I or II vets in the background. They look way more fit than Joe Biden, and they're definitely way older than him.
By force. These are perennial. The struggle between a dictatorship and freedom is unending. Here in Europe, we see one stark example. Ukraine has been invaded by a tyrant bent on domination. Ukrainians are fighting with extraordinary courage, suffering great losses, but never backing down.
Don't forget, Ukraine was Nazi controlled.
They've been inflicted on the Russian aggressors. They've suffered tremendous losses, Russia. The numbers are staggering. 350,000 Russian troops dead or wounded. Nearly 1 million people have left Russia because they can no longer see a future in Russia. The United States and NATO
Talking about
and a coalition of more than 50 countries standing strong with Ukraine.
There's no way we've got 50 fucking countries that support Ukraine right now. You are a lying sack of shit. But again, this is not about Ukraine. This is about the veterans, the men that died on the beach, that died in the air, that died making that day happen. Joe. No one gives a fuck about Ukraine.
We will not walk away. Because if we do, Ukraine will be subjugated and will not end there. Ukraine's neighbors will be threatened. All of Europe will be threatened.
Says
And make
you.
no mistake, the autocrats of the world are watching closely to see what happens in Ukraine, to see if we let this illegal aggression go unchecked. We cannot let that happen.
Stop screaming.
To surrender to bullies, to bow down to dictators is simply unthinkable.
You impersonate your political opponent.
Were we to do that, it means we'd be forgetting what happened here in these hallowed beaches. Make no mistake, we will not bow down. We will not forget. Let me end with this. History tells us freedom is not free. If you want to know the price of freedom, come here to Normandy. Come to Normandy and look. Go to the other cemeteries in Europe where our fallen heroes rest. Go back home to Arlington Cemetery. Tomorrow, I will pay respects at Pointe du Hoc. Go there as well and remember, the price of unchecked tyranny is the blood of the young and the brave. In their generation, in their hour of trial, the Allied forces of D-Day did their duty. Now the question for us is, in our hour of trial, will we do ours? We're living in a time when democracy is more at risk across the world than any point since the end of World War II, since these beaches were stormed in 1944. Now we have to ask ourselves, will we stand against tyranny, against evil, against crushing brutality of the iron fist? Will we stand for freedom? Will we defend democracy? Will we stand together? My answer is yes, and only can be yes. We're not far off from the time when the last living voices of those who fought and bled on D-Day will no longer be with us. So we have a special obligation. We cannot let what happened here be lost in the silence of the years to come. We must remember it, must honor it, and live it. And we must remember the fact that they were heroes here that day does not absolve us from what we have to do today. Democracy is never guaranteed. Every generation must preserve it, defend it, and fight for it. That's the test of the ages. In memory of those who fought.
I'm gonna let him finish, but should we remind Joe that the Russians, right, in World War II, were beating back the Nazis, who were from, wait for it, Ukraine. So we helped take down the Nazis, who are in turn also part of Ukraine. But now Ukraine's good. Ukraine's great. Ukraine has the support of 50 coalition forces. Does he mean like one country or like just 50 forces? Because, you know, the army's got 4 branches. Maybe the other one's got like 4 branches as well.
Here, died here, literally saved the world here. Let us be worthy of their sacrifice. Let us be the generation that when history is written about our time, in 10, 20, 30, 50, 80 years from now, it'll be said, when the moment came, we met the moment. We stood strong. Our alliances were made stronger.
Right.
We saved democracy in our time as well. Thank you very much, and may God bless you all.
You know, I'm
May
starting
God
to think the
protect
word democracy doesn't mean the same thing that it does anymore. feel like democracy is just a fancy word for, hey, we're taking away your freedoms for the illusion of safety. All right. All right.
Our troops. Thank you.
Now back to the pedophile lady. Hold on. Let's show her fucking face again. Macron's wife, right there. So when she met and started dating Macron on the right, she was a teacher in the same school as his classmate. You heard it right. His classmate's mom was a teacher at his school. And he started around 15. But that doesn't mean anything because, well, they're France, and France is one of those countries that we follow the example of, because they're great. And
We know the dark forces that these heroes fought against 80 years ago. They never fade. Aggression and
okay, so he's
greed,
14.
the desire to dominate and control, to change borders by force, these are perennial. The struggle between a dictatorship and freedom is unending. Here in Europe, we see one stark example. Ukraine has been invaded by a tyrant bent on
shit, we already saw this.
domination.
Why am I rewinding it?
Ukrainians are fighting
right.
with
So
To
now,
the back.
all these people that he's talking for and basically saying, well, we're here for them. We're here for them. But at the same time, we need to fight back the aggressors of Russia and support Ukraine because that's what we did against the Nazis. Forgot about history, Joe. We forgot about history. So we're going to listen to a bunch of veterans from the D-Day beach invasion. I really don't know what they have to say. But after that video that they decided they wouldn't let me play this morning, I figured, fuck the events. Let's listen to the people that were there. Because that's what matters. And if I know anything about veterans, we love to talk. You just got to get us started. But anyway, hold on. You're right. I can't believe you can't type Hitler or Adolf in the chats. That's fucking stupid. Considering, what if we're talking about World War II? Who was the main enemy in World War II? Adolf Hitler.
Back of me, there was a soldier. So I hollered, "Hey, buddy, have you got a match?" No answer. I turned and looked, and there was no head under the helmet.
You are about to embark upon the Great Crusade.
To meet this mounting aggression.
And make no mistake about it, good will prevail.
What the fuck up, Bush?
I was born in Owatonna, Minnesota, and raised in 2 miles west of Hope on a farm. My dad could not afford to pay for my room and board in town. We lived out in the country, and I was going to quit high school, and I got a job helping a lady that had 8 room and boarders, and for my room and board. So my cousin Chick and I were walking around on a Saturday morning, and walked by the Roxy Theater, and it said, Saturday matinee, Gene
Sometimes,
Autry.
Roots, you know, stories just come out, and it's like a therapy session, I guess. But when it comes to like a group of veterans coming together, no matter what war they were in, I'm just gonna say war vets. We just have that connection that we can just talk about anything and everything and never really say anything substantial. It's great. I just sound retarded when I say it out loud.
America's favorite cowboy.
Gene Autry?
10 cents. Between us, we couldn't come up with a penny. He says, Jake, the National Guard is advertising they want to fill their ranks. This is when Hitler took the Sudetenland from Czechoslovakia and annexed Austria. So the National Guard was preparing itself for a war
Roots.
in 1938.
Those men are
And,
true heroes.
He said, Chick says,
I know you can still talk.
let's go
to him.
down
Tell him
to
I
the
said thank you.
armory and
Even
enlist.
though,
I said,
obviously.
Chirk, we're 15 years old. You have to be 18 years old. Chick said to me, Jake, we'll go down there. And when they ask you
Why?
how old you are, you look them right in the eye and say, 18 years, sir. He looked up, what can I do for you, young men? Wow, that was give us inspiration right there, being called young men when we were just 15-year-old boys. I said, sir, we'd like to join the National Guard. And I'm looking at him and thinking, 18, 18, 18. He said, what year were you born?
Oh, fuck.
Whoa, wait a minute. Wait a minute. I was born in 1922. Take 3 away from that, that's 1919. 1919, sir. He says, sign right here. Then the Japanese hit Pearl Harbor.
Fucking Jap.
And the next thing I knew, the 135th Infantry Regiment was moved to Fort Dix, New Jersey for embarkation.
Oh.
So we went overseas and started off out in Armagh, North
Africa?
Ireland.
Oh, Ireland.
Got transferred into G3 of 5th Corps. I didn't even know
How?
what G3 was.
What the fuck
at
was
that
your
time.
job?
And 5th Corps, what in the world is that, man? I'm from an infantry. I found out. Corps, there's 2 corps under every army.
Yep.
And a corps has 2 divisions in it. Man, I'm from an infantry regiment. You can't get any lower. And here I am up next to Army. And G3, there's 4 Gs
Yeah, that's
in the Corps.
intel. Well,
G1
Operations.
is personnel. G2, intelligence, where they go out and get intelligence on the enemy, and they inform. G3, the plans and training. Plans. I became a sergeant, and out of the 30 people, Colonel Hill picked me to go with him to plan the invasion.
no shit.
We went to Portsmouth,
Must have been one hell of an NCO.
and that's where General Eisenhower and all his staff was down there. I didn't see him. We worked on the troop movements of our 2 divisions
plans and
under
operations.
us. We had the 1st Division and the 29th Division under us that landed on Omaha Beach on D-Day. That's pretty much how I got in on the invasion. On D-Day, I landed with troops from the 1st Division, the 16th Infantry Regiment. And when we got to the shore, we landed with water right up to our chins. They left us off too far out. And I had been the first one on that LST,
Oh, great.
so I sat right next to the pilot, a Navy pilot. And when the ramp went down and they got into the water and out, I was the last one in line.
Yeah, because you're the
Now,
first
I'll
one.
tell you that they had over 1 million mines in that Omaha Beach. 1 million. And there were other lines going in at the same time that we were going in. And once in a while, the spurt of water would shoot up in the air. Somebody stepped on a mine. I was more afraid of stepping on a mine
shot.
than I was at the gunfire coming at us. And when we got up out of the water, I separated from the 16th Regiment.
Why?
And I got behind a berm, drawing machine gun fire from two machine guns. These German machine guns. Those machine guns, 42 shot 1,200 rounds a minute.
Man, that's gonna
Twice
burn that
as
barrel up.
fast as any of ours. So they had me pinned down from both sides of the cliffs, and I got behind this little berm that was 6, 8 inches tall, and that berm saved my life there. And while they were shooting right there in front of that berm,
What's up, Lart?
I dragged out a cigarette. I had a waterproof cigarette holder. Put it in my mouth. My matches were wet. I could see peripheral vision. To the back of me, there was a soldier. So I hollered, "Hey, buddy, have you got a match?" No answer. I turned and looked, and there was no head under the helmet. It probably saved my life to turn. It's like the soul of that guy said, "Get up and get out of here now." And by some miracle, those machine guns stopped to reload or to change barrels or something. I
Okay.
got up and ran toward the cliffs. And while I was running, they got started again, and they were firing at me. And I said, "God, what is happening? I'm getting fired at. I can't see anybody to shoot back at." I made it to the cliff without a scratch.
Good shit.
At that time, they opened up the path up the cliff through this ravine that had been filled with barbed wire. Couldn't get up there, and they got Bangalore torpedoes came in, and they shoved those up there and blasted out that barbed wire. And that's when the Germans cleared out, because once you get behind them, you got them dead to rights. So to tell you the truth, I do not remember going up that cliff or up that ravine and everything. The next thing I remember, Madison Rich, Corporal Madison Rich, and I were digging our foxholes. It was 7 o'clock at night on D-Day. I had found a litter, brand new.
Yeah. How?
It was just laying there. So I dug my foxhole a little bit longer
To fit
and
the
put
litter to
that
sleep
litter in the bottom. I was going to sleep on that, avoid the wet sand.
on. Raised it.
And 7:15 at night, someone hollered from the command post, "Sergeant Larson, Colonel Hill wants to see you immediately." So I went in, reported to Colonel Hill, and he says, "Sergeant," he says, I just got word from First Army. They want me to keep G3 open 24 hours
Oh,
a day.
fuck.
You are going to run the night shift."
Yo, if that's how it started back then, that's the way they do it now. It's a 24-hour operations for S3, G3, whatever you want to call them, because somebody's got to be awake to do the data analysis, the battlefield analysis, to brief the next group coming in. Crazy. I just thought that was the norm.
I said, "Starting right now?" He said, "Starting right now." So I went back. It still wasn't 7:30, so I went back, told Madison Rich. I said, "Hey, Matty, you can sleep in my foxhole tonight. I got that litter in there." And he says, "Jake, I got my fart sack all ready here." So he laid his M1 Garand
For those who don't know what a fart sack is, that's the sleeping bag slang that we call it. All right.
rifle on my litter, and he went to sleep, I went to work. And at midnight, a German reconnaissance plane came over and started taking pictures.
Uh-oh.
They had these parachute, handkerchief size parachutes with magnesium flares in there that lighten up the sky like better than daylight. And our
glow.
anti-aircraft then started shooting up at them. And after a while, and I don't remember a thing until somebody came to relieve me at 7:30 in the morning. At 7:30, they said, "You're off, Jake." So I went to my foxhole, and here Madison Rich was getting up from his, and he reached down and picked up his rifle off of my litter, and it broke in two.
Oh.
A piece of shrapnel from our gun shooting at that reconnaissance plane, a piece of our shrapnel came down and hit that rifle
Holy fuck.
and broke that rifle in two. There is a God.
I'd rather my rifle be broken too.
There is a God.
God damn, I was.
And I said to myself, what the hell just happened? And how come I'm still alive? How come I'm still alive? I was born in Brooklyn, New York, and raised in Brooklyn, New York.
Is there a history of military service in your family?
All the family. My father was in the First World War. My brother was in the Army, and my young brother was in the Marine Corps.
What did your brother do in your father do in the First World War?
He never got overseas.
Never got overseas.
In Fort Dix for the whole year.
Was he drafted or did he sign up?
At that time, he was volunteer, yeah.
Volunteer? Awesome. So why did you join the service?
When did I go into service?
What was your reason for going to the service?
The Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. At that time, everybody wanted to do their part, you know. So I was in my senior year in high school, and 17 of
I was a
us
senior too.
left the school year and we all volunteered. Who in the Army, who in the Navy, who in the Coast Guard. Yeah.
Okay, so why'd you join the Coast Guard?
I first volunteered for the Air Force as a belly gunner, you know, the gunner. And I took all the tests, and I failed because of peripheral vision.
Oh.
So then I joined the Navy. I passed all the tests they wanted. And he says, fine, come back in 6 weeks. I wanted to go immediately.
Yep.
So next door was the Coast Guard. That's how I became a Coast Guard.
Awesome.
Yo, that's crazy. Okay, not that I'm stealing this dude's glory, but when I went to join the military out of high school, it was my senior year. I originally called the Air Force recruiters, and oddly enough, I got tired of waiting for them, so I went to visit them. They were closed, and then a short little staff sergeant walks out of the Army recruiting office like, hey, can I help you? I was like, no, I'm looking for the Air Force guy. And he was like, well, come on in and see what we can do for you. I'm like, all right. And then the rest is history. The Air Force recruiter fucking called me 4 weeks after I enlisted in the Army, and I told him to fuck off.
Where did you go for the training for the Coast Guard? Where was it, the training?
Manhattan Beach in New York.
Oh, Manhattan. So you basically stayed home?
Yeah.
Awesome, Manhattan Beach in New York. How was that?
Good.
It was training?
6 weeks of hell. You know, you were in your drill sergeant, remember? You know what they do? They knock you down so they can build you up. That's
The whole purpose.
Absolutely. So what ship were you assigned to once training finished?
On his head.
What ship did you go to?
USS Samuel Chase.
Can you tell me about how it was on the ship and what your job was?
My job,
mate.
originally, I was a gunner's mate. I was in charge of 4 20-millimeter anti-aircraft guns on the stern of the ship.
You were strong.
But during invasions, I was on the Higgins boat going into the beach.
So the Coast Guard now and the Coast Guard back then, what was the Coast Guard's mission?
It was all amphibious at the time. Yeah.
So it wasn't like guarding New York. You were actually over in Europe.
Oh, yeah. After 6 weeks, they sent me over to Europe.
God damn.
And when I joined the Coast Guard, my mother was very happy. She thought I'd be patrolling the beaches on Coney Island. 6 weeks later, I was on my way to Europe.
Did you tell her where you were? Did you tell your mother where you were?
Yeah, I told her, you know, when I originally signed up at 17, my mom had to sign a release. She wouldn't sign. She said, when you finish high school, I'll sign. But I left high school.
Forced my parents to sign.
I wanted to get into it.
So when did you head over to England?
When did I go to England? 6 weeks after boot camp.
You remember what year? Do you remember what year that was?
It was 1943. I don't remember the date, though.
Okay. Do you remember D-Day?
I was there doing D-Day.
D-Day? What were the preparations like for D-Day in England?
Well, we did maneuvers day in and day out, day in and day out.
Muscle memory.
In Virginia Beach down in, like Norfolk. And then, you know, we had 1,200 troops aboard my ship. From the Big Red One, the 1st Division. And the day of the invasion.
Toast to the Army's favorite son. All hail. Fuck, man. I sang that shit wrong.
We made a
Now I'm
big
gonna go
mistake.
fix myself.
We fed the troops bacon and eggs and everything you could think of. That was a big mistake. If you know anything about going in battle, the Russians used to go in battle with a hardtack and a glass of water or something like that.
You're supposed to sing
We
that.
overfed the troops. It was the worst thing we could ever do because they all got seasick, every one of them.
Do you remember what you were thinking when you discovered that D-Day was about to happen?
I was scared.
Hold on. Always the first, 2/3 for a fight. No foe shall challenge our right to victory. We take the field, a grand sight to see. Pride of the infantry, men of a great division, courage is our tradition. Forward the big red one.
I was scared because I knew there was going to be a lot of casualties on the beach. And we ended up with 2,000 casualties on my beach, Omaha Beach. We were the worst of the five stars. We were the worst. Omaha Beach was the worst.
Do you remember what you seen as you were approaching Omaha Beach? What it looked like? Mm-hmm. Do you remember what it looked like and what you seen when you were approaching Omaha Beach?
Yeah, of course I know what it looked like. At 4 o'clock in the morning, we started dropping our boats in the water. We had 26 Higgins boats. You know what a Higgins boat is, right? Yeah. We had 26 boats. We circled the ship one time, supposed to be good luck, and we headed towards the beaches. We were 11 miles out because the Germans had a gun called the 88, which is the best gun in the war, and had a range of 10 miles.
Holy shit.
So all the transports were 11 miles out, which is very good for them, not for us, because it took us 2 hours to get to the beach. And in the water, going to the beach, were mines made out of glass or plastic. And you can hardly see them in the water, you know. A couple of boats, not from my ship, but a couple of boats hit the mines and they got killed. Yeah.
Do you remember what the soldiers were saying as they got closer to the German gunfire?
You gotta say that again.
You remember what some of the soldiers were saying as they can hear and got closer to
The soldiers?
Yeah, what they were saying when they got
You know, they didn't realize they were going to their death. They were singing and talking and laughing, telling jokes until they got fired at.
Didn't the mood like suddenly changed once they started getting
We couldn't get on the beach. You know, Higgins boat was on the beach. We couldn't get on the beach because there was obstacles in the water. You know, these cross beams with metal. And it was mine. And along the beach, the Germans had 33 machine guns. M42s. It fires 160 rounds per minute. So my job originally, I'm a gunner's mate. So I was supposed to be posting a machine gun on the boat.
You had a 40, right? Or a 50.
You in the service? You know how they act? You know what they do? About 3 or 4 weeks before the invasion, they took my gun away.
Oh.
If you ask me why, I don't know. So consequently, instead of the machine guns, they give me the job of dropping the ramp. You know, in the front of the boat. The boat is made out of wood, but in the front of the boat they have this ramp, like a garage door ramp, and it's made of 2 or 3 inch metal, so it can withstand either a rifle or a machine gun. So when we got close enough to the beach, we only go about 200 yards from the beach. That's the closest we could get. And the machine guns opened fire on us. And the bullets were bouncing off the ramp because it was metal, it was up. But I knew eventually I had to drop the ramp. And then the bullets, instead of hitting the ramp, they would come into the boat. So the coxswain says to me, drop the ramp. I never heard him because the roar of the cannons, 2 big diesel engines in the back of the boat, I never heard him. Then the second time he says to me, drop the ramp. And I froze for a few seconds because I didn't want to die. And I knew once I dropped that ramp, I buzzed. And then he said to me, he says, goddamn DeVita, drop the effing ramp. So I had no choice. I dropped the ramp. The machine guns opened up fire. Killed about 14, 15 troops that were in the front of the boat.
How many were on the boat?
Now where I was, there was a crank that lowered and raised the ramp. I was about 3/4 of the way back. You know anything about basketball?
Yeah.
You know pickers?
Yes.
Well, I had soldiers in front of me. They were my pick. They were absorbing the bullets that would come to me, you know. But I had two stragglers. They didn't want to die, so they didn't want to get the other troops are going forward. They stayed with me. They thought by staying with me, they'd be safe. Unfortunately, by staying with me, they were drawing fire from the hills. Didn't help me. There was two guys. One guy was about 4 feet away from me. The other guy was about 2 feet away from me. The first guy got hit, ripped his stomach open. His stomach's outside his belly. Fortunately, he lived. This guy lived.
Oh, shit.
And the other guy that was 2 feet away from me, he was a redheaded kid. The machine gun took his helmet off and part of his brain and part of his, and he was crying, help me, help me, help me. I had no morphine, I couldn't help him.
What's up, Treach?
So he fell at my feet. Excuse me if I get a little emotional. He fell at my feet and he was crying, help me, help me, help me. I had nothing in my kit to help him. So the only thing I had was the Lord's Prayer. And I started praying, Our Father who art in heaven. I never finished it. Then he slumped down. I knew he was going to die. And I reached down and I squeezed his hand. I want him to know that he wasn't alone. And he died. He died. He was just a little boy. Just a little boy. So,
That's the way it works.
then the coxswain says, pick up the ramp because we're getting a lot of flak from the hills and from the machine guns on the beach. So he says to me, raise the ramp. So I pulled the handle, the ramp would not go up. Pulled it a second time, the ramp would not go up. So I put it on auto, wouldn't go up. So my job, there was probably maybe 15 guys still alive on that boat. My job was to protect these guys with the ramp. So I couldn't see the ramp from where I was because of all the dead bodies in front of me. So I had to do something I didn't want to do. I was crawling over the dead bodies and asking for them forgiveness. They were dead. And I'm saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. So I climbed over the dead bodies and I started going through the ramp. And all of a sudden, one guy came out. I don't know if he was a crew member or Army. I didn't care, so I had some help. So when we got to close enough to the beach, I wanted to know why the ramp wouldn't go up.
Bodies.
There was 2 dead soldiers. They never got out of the boat. And they were on the ramp. Plus the weight of the soldiers. And each soldier had 90 pounds on his backpack. So the ramp would not go up. So this other guy and myself, I pointed to his belt. And we grabbed his belt. And by step, we pulled him into the 2 boys that were dead, into the boat. Then he says to me, raise the ramp. So without the 2 guys, when I had it on a pilot, it came up by itself anyhow. So, you know, the Germans are very diabolical. They know how to kill people. Besides the mines and the machine guns, they're telephone poles. On top of the telephone pole was a mine. It wasn't screwed in or nailed in. It was just sitting there. So if you happen to tap
hit it.
the telephone pole, that mine would come in your boat. We were scared of the telephone poles. So anyhow, the coxswain was with me. He was a little kid from Brooklyn, New York, Durham. And he got out of it, because don't forget, he had to go backwards through these mines, through these telephone poles. He turned the boat around, and we started heading towards my boat. My captain was very smart, which each wave, he came a little closer to the shore, a little closer to the shore.
Smart.
So we headed for my boat, my ship rather, and then we saw this white ship with a big red cross on it. It's a hospital ship. So instead of going to our ship, we went to the hospital ship.
Smart.
Because we had a lot of wounded aboard, badly wounded. And when we got to the hospital ship, there was a ramp on the back. And two guys from the hospital ship, God bless them, they jumped into my boat. And they did something we couldn't do. They were peeling the dead off to get to the wounded. I don't remember exactly. I was like in a little shock at that time. I don't remember if they got 5, 6, I don't know how many. But they got these guys and they put them in the hospital ship. At least they were going to live. They had wheelchairs, they had morphine, they had everything on the hospital ship. I was happy that these guys are going to get all the care they needed. So then these two guys jumped out of the boat. We pulled it away from the hospital ship, and we headed towards my ship. On the back of my ship, they had dropped a sled. A sled is like a garage door, a big garage door. And we would put the dead and wounded on there, and then the crank would take them on board ship. So somebody yelled through a klaxon horn. I want one man from each boat to come up to be interviewed, or not interviewed, because he figured maybe we could help the next wave. So I got aboard the sled and I went up and I was interviewed by a Navy guy and a big Army guy. That guy had hands as big as a baseball mitt. And he did something, like I said, I was in shock. He did something, he tapped me on the shoulder. He said, "It's all right. It's all right, son." It was like a hug. It's like a hug. So I was interviewed with him. And then this Army guy said to me, he says, "Son, let me teach you something." He said, "Those machine guns can only fire for so long. Then they burn, they get hot. And they got to change the barrels. When they change the barrels, that's when you drop the ramp." So I said to him, "How much time do I have?" 2 to 3 seconds to change the barrel. So that's what I did. So then, after I was interviewed, see, my boat already had pulled away to 28. So I'm waiting for another boat. And I'm standing on deck, and nobody's around me because I stunk to high heaven. My uniform was covered with blood and puke. So I'm standing by myself, and I said to myself, do I want to go back into the belly of the beast and face those machine guns? I didn't want to die. So I thought about it for a while, and I said to myself, if I don't go, they're going to send a replacement. Suppose the replacement gets killed. How could I live with myself?
Exactly.
So I made up my mind, I'm going back. And I went back 14 more times.
14 more times.
I made 15 trips altogether. The Germans owned the beach. The Germans owned the beach, not us. And they were slaughtering the troops left and right, from the hills and from the ground. These poor guys, they had no chance. You know, it was flat like a pool table. No place to hide. You can't dig in sand. And they were getting killed so fast. So, like I said, I was in a little bit of a shock. So anyhow, the coxswain says, DeVita took up the ramp, and we're getting flak coming in on both sides. Let's get the hell out of here. So I tried to pick up the ramp, like I told you before, the ramp would not go in there, not go up. So we went back to my ship. That's when I was all alone, right? There was 5 destroyers all along, but the lead destroyer was the Frankfurt. And then 1 or 2 other destroyers, the Sadley was there and the McGook. So the 3 of them came in at the same time. But the Frankfurt, you know, you were a soldier, you know what it is. When you attack an enemy, you attack his nose because there's the smallest silhouette. He did that, and he came so close to shore. You know, our boats can go on the beach. A destroyer has a keel. They can't get too close. He was in sand. So then he did something I've never seen done before. This guy was willing to sacrifice his life and his boat and all his men because he wanted to help these guys on the beach. So he took his boat that was facing this way and he turned it sideways, exposing his beam to the 88s. The reason he did that, a destroyer has 4 5-inch guns. He wanted to fire these 5-inch guns at one time.
Now
The guys up on the hill that were facing us had machine guns, 88s up there. We couldn't see them. They were in the grass, foliage and stuff like that. So he put a round of his 5-inch guns, 4 at a time. And he took out those guys on the slope. And right then there, the battle started changing. Now, that's the 5th wave. Don't forget, we were 4 transports going in.
One strategic move.
Each transport had 1,200 men. So we had a lot of men going into that beach.
By the end of it, after Dallas had taken the beach, what were you thinking at the end of the day?
I was scared shit.
Scared shit still?
I didn't want to die.
Right. What did you do in the days after the invasion?
After the invasion? It's a good question. I got to go back to the 5th wave to bring you up to date on this. By the 5th wave, we ran out of troops. So we started taking the 29th Division because the 29th Division was on Utah, and Utah at that time was clean. So they swung over to help the 1st Division. That's the first 5. We ran out of troops, and we had to do something else. Instead of going into the beach, we started to take the dead and the wounded off the beach. We had to get in the water. I weighed 125 pounds. I couldn't lift one of these guys up. So 2 or 3 of us we got. And we put them in the boat. We started going back to my ship. Now, I don't know how many wounded we took to my ship, but I do know that we took 308 dead bodies. Why do I know that? Because I had a good friend of mine, John Ola, who was a quartermaster, and his job was to put the bodies in the body bags, and he dispensed 308 dead body bags. So now they brought my boat up. I don't remember what boat it was because the 28 was gone. They brought my boat up, and I looked at that boat. It looked like Swiss cheese. The machines had decimated it. And I'm saying to myself, how the hell did anybody live off that boat, right? So I got aboard the ship, yeah. And I'm waiting. I'm waiting. And the captain was so good for it. His name was Captain Frisch. He understood what we had gone through. So after we took these 300 dead bodies and the wounded, I don't know how many wounded we started going back to Southampton. That was the home base. And we went to Southampton. I want to backtrack a little bit. When I'm aboard the ship and we're going towards Southampton, I'm all by myself. They announced over the loudspeaker, there's cheese sandwiches and coffee for the crews that went into the beach. So everybody went down to the mess hall. I didn't want to go. First of all, I stunk to heaven, high heaven. And I didn't want him to see my cry. I wanted him to see me cry. So I walked back to my 20mm guns, and I sat down, and I'm reflecting. And I said to myself, what the hell just happened? And how come I'm still alive? How come I'm still alive? So it was a wet deck. It was probably 10, 11 o'clock. I forget the time. And I'm all alone. And I looked around to see if any of my mates were with me. Nobody was there. But when I turned around, all the dead bodies, the 308 dead bodies, like a cord of wood, I started to cry. And I cried myself to sleep. And the next morning when we pulled into Southampton, somebody tapped me on the shoulder. I think it was Lieutenant Gruber, I'm not sure. He said, DeVita, get up. We have to unload the dead and then the wounded. And really, that's the end of my story. That's the end of my story.
So, after Southampton, what else did you do on
My home base was Glasgow, Scotland.
Glasgow, Scotland?
We went up to Glasgow, Scotland.
What more did you do until you came home? Like,
Before I came home,
yeah,
I made 2 more invasions.
2 more invasions back in France?
Yeah, I made the invasion of southern France and the Philippines. So I had 3 battle stars
In the Philippines, so that was your time in the Pacific.
in Pacific, yeah.
Well, I hope
Was it
so.
similar to D-Day? Or
You know, no, it wasn't as bad. But you know, after all the horror of the 2 invasions in France, we thought we were going home. Then the announcer of the loudspeakers, get your gear in order, we're going to the Pacific. And I didn't make the actual invasion of the Philippine Islands, but we did bring replacement troops into the Philippines. So we got credit for an invasion. And then from there, we went up to Okinawa. And I was in Okinawa when the kamikazes came over. And the kamikazes were sinking boat after boat. They didn't want my boat. My boat was only a transport. They wanted the destroyers and the aircraft carriers. That's what they aimed at. So after the kamikazes left, I had there twice. When the kamikaze twice, I was there. Then we went back to Pearl Harbor. And on the way to Pearl Harbor, we hit a coral reef. And we put a 17-foot gash in the hull of the ship.
Oh, that's fun.
You know, the Titanic, the reason he sank,
the iceberg?
they didn't close the hatches. So our guys, especially trained for that, they closed the hatches on this one place where the water was coming in. And the boat was tilting like this. So they gave us 2 destroyers to get as far as Pearl Harbor. No, not Pearl Harbor, Okinawa, yeah. Excuse me, the Philippines. Philippines, because the Philippines had a dry dock. And they took our ship, put it in the dry, we had to wait our turn. They put it in the dry dock and they put a patch. They couldn't put the whole hull up. So we left there and we started to come to Pearl. We went to Pearl and the destroyers were still with us. And after Pearl, we started going home to the United States. And we went to San Diego. Can I put a little humor in this?
Sure.
Absolutely.
They put our ship in dry dock. They're going to put a new hull. So I had a friend of mine who lived right near the shipyard. And I said to him, I'm going to go AWOL.
Whoa.
But I want you to call me. If they come out of dry dock, I'll come back. So the train didn't leave from San Diego. It left from San Francisco. So I took a bus to San Francisco. I got on the troop train that was going to the United States, called the Silver Streak. All Army guys and Navy guys, a lot of them wounded. Had no papers, but thankfully nobody asked for papers. So I get home. I run to my house was about a mile and a half from the subway where I got off. I ran all the way home. I wanted to see my mother. My father was at work. My brother was away. My kid brother was in school. I didn't know what to do. I went next door. The woman's name was Mrs. Barsha. And I said, Mrs. Barsha, where's my mother? Have something to eat. You know, I'll tell you, so have something to eat. I said, no, I can't. Where's my mother?
Uh-oh.
She's at the church rolling bandages. So I ran to the church. It was about a mile and a half away. And I opened the door. It was like a big gymnasium. And I'm facing these women. They were in a big circle. My mother had her back to me. But the people who were looking at me, they were going like that, you know. My mother didn't know what's going on. She turned around, she saw me, fainted it away. I thought I killed my mother. So anyhow, we went home. My mother called the whole army. Frank is home, Frank is home, Frank is home. So I'm home for 2 weeks. You know, you don't get 2 weeks leave.
Hell no.
My father was in the Army in the First World War. He said to me, he says, you know, you're home a long time. Let me see your papers. I said, Pop, I don't have any papers. I'm all AWOL.
I hope you slap the shit
Get in the
out.
car, took me to Grand Central Station. First train back to San Francisco. I had to wait for the first train. So I'm waiting for the train with my father. And there was 2 MPs. My father walks over to the MPs. He said, you see that kid over there? That's my son. He's AWOL. But he's going back. He threw me on the train, under the bus.
Because you want
My own
AWOL.
father.
Howard.
So the MPs came over.
But he went
And he
back.
says, this is what we're going to do. When the train comes in, if you're on the train, we won't do anything. If you don't get on the train, we're going to pull you in. I got on the train. I went. It was still in the dry dock. I went back to my ship. And that's the end of my story.
Wow.
You said
That's
that
an awesome story.
10 minutes ago.
That's one of the best ones I've heard since interviewing.
Not taking anything
veterans,
away from
for
what he was
sure.
saying, but
And let me tell you something. If somebody in battle says they weren't scared,
They're lying.
they were scared.
They were scared. Oh yeah.
They're lying. You gotta be scared. You know, I was on the boat with the machine guns. I had machine guns, bullets, like a swarm of angry bees. One guy went down, the other guy went down. Is the next one mine? You're scared?
76 years later, Who or what do you think about when you think of, you know,
Say that again.
what is it that you think about D-Day 76 years later?
I relive it every day of my life.
Every day?
Yeah. Not the other battles. But D-Day was the worst.
Is there one thing that sticks in your mind
Always
the
the
most?
worst one.
D-Day, yeah. I mean, when I left after the 15th trip in, there was 2,000 dead bodies on the beach. 2,000. You got to be scared. Anybody tells you they're not scared, they're lying. Yeah.
What are you most proud of during your time in the service? What are you most proud of during your time in the
That I served and I helped get rid of Hitler and Hirohito. Because they were so bad. They were so bad, yeah.
Well, Mr. DeVita, thank you so much for being with us. And
Okay, before I go, I just want to tell you something. I'm not a hero. A lot of people call me a hero. I'm not a hero.
My man.
I'm a survivor. There's a cemetery up. You ever been to France?
I haven't been to France. I've been to Germany.
There's a cemetery up in France, in Normandy. Omaha Beach overlooks the cemetery.
Yep.
In that cemetery is 9,400 kids in the ground. Those are my heroes. They gave their life for their country. They were my heroes. And that's what she wrote. And if you think it's over, it's never over. Were you in combat?
I was in Iraq. I was in Iraq, and I was with the Army Sustainment Brigade,
Don't you think of that quite often?
combat medic, and our MRAP
That's
blew
what I'm
up.
talking about.
Very scared.
I mean, in Iraq,
Very scared.
you go along, hit a mine, you got no more legs.
Yeah. It shakes me up every day today still. It
Isn't
is a
it?
speed bump, and I kind of
They say
lose my mind a little bit.
you leave the war,
But it never
but the
leaves.
war never leaves you.
No.
Yeah. But I'm proud of what I did. I'm very proud. I probably did more in the 3 years that I was aboard the ship than a lot of people ever did. You know, 2 invasions, and then the Philippines, Okinawa. Then I'd end up in Japan. I was in the occupation of Japan for about 8 months. Yeah. When I was in Japan, a little Japanese woman, about 5 feet tall, she walked up to me. First they bow like this, and then she says, "I want to thank you." I said, "Why are you thanking me?" She said, "The war's over." You know, it's the big people who make wars, not the common people. They're the ones who get hurt. Yeah.
You know, in Normandy, you had a stench of death in your clothes.
I think this might be. The last one before the museum. Okay. Yeah, this guy's job. If I remember this one right, his job sucked.
Clothes that you slept in. You're spitting all the time. Some guys chew tobacco. Some guys got their hands on liquor somehow. And when you're seeing bodies every day, like your age, and you look at the condition that many of them are in, you don't forget that.
You are about to embark upon the Great Crusade.
To meet this mounting aggression.
And make no mistake about it,
June 16th, 1925, in Boston, Massachusetts. And we moved to California when I was 9 years old, 1934, in a 32 Chevrolet. 9 people, mother, father, 7 kids. We didn't stop for food or motels. We slept in the car. We pulled a flatbed trailer. Before we left, we visited the relatives, the Italian relatives. Oh, you're going to die crossing the desert, no water.
That was a year ago.
I was a frightened little boy before that. I was a nervous little kid. You want me to tell you why? Okay. We were at a funeral for my little cousin Teresa, 8 years old. And my mother, who had lost her voice before this, it suddenly came back to her when they were lowering the casket of Teresa. She screamed Teresa as they're lowering the casket. I'm just a little 5-year-old. I had a fear of death after that for a long time. There's another incident, my grandfather, they had wakes in the homes. So I went to the wake in a home in Boston, and the casket was in a bay window, and it was open, and I was standing very close to him, about from here to that wall. Everybody in the kitchen speaking Italian, English, laughing, crying, drinking, eating. I was a bewildered little kid, so I had that experience when I was 5, and again 7 with death. And so that's why I was a nervous little kid. On the way to California, 2 of my brothers drove. One was 18, the other one I think was 20, and my dad, and in a 32 Chevrolet. This was in 1934. So my dad lost a lot of property during the Depression, and had all he could do is scrape up that money. My grandfather, his father, kept saying, "Go to California. Money grows on trees there." So anyway, we did. Okay, I got drafted in October of 1943, and I tried to get in the Air Corps. I wanted to be a pilot. My brother was a pilot. My brother-in-law was a pilot.
I guess your eyes.
It looked like a very glorified thing to do, and so I went down to sign up. My eyes were 20/22, and I flunked.
Yeah, 20.
He told me,
better.
eat a lot of carrots and come back. I was working at Douglas Aircraft on SBD dive bombers. I get in the cockpit of these airplanes and say, oh my God, I'd love to fly one. Anyway, that didn't help. Second time, still flunked. I cried. The doctor said, well, just think, maybe you get killed being a pilot. They sent me to Cheyenne, Wyoming in the winter. As I arrived there, I had the flu. I was in a hospital there about a week. When I found out I was going to be in Graves registration, I thought, what the hell is that? I don't like the word Graves. But they made us feel like we were going to have a white-collar job, staying in hotels and stuff. Well, the training was a regular infantry basic training in the winter of November, December, January, February. Cold, windy. We did all our basic in that weather. We also were sent to Denver to a hospital called Fitzsimmons. It's no longer there, I don't think. But anyway, we were sent there to toughen us up mentally to see an autopsy. And I stood in the back of the room while they were sawing this guy's head open, you know, and the coroners had white smocks. It was just before lunchtime. So that's the mental training we had about bodies. So,
What were you thinking about this time? About all
what was I thinking about?
He was probably
I was thinking about, I can't do that.
Oh.
I can't be around dead bodies. So what I did, one day, luckily, next to us was Fort Warren Air Base. We were at Fort Francis E. Warren, Fort Warren next to us. One day, recruiters came over, recruiting for the Air Force. Guess what? They lowered the eye requirements to 2030.
Oh.
Nobody knows that except me. 2030, because I told them I can't pass up 2022. Oh, no, 2030, no glasses. So I took the physical, a whole deal, had to write home the teachers for references. Anyway, they accepted me. They notified my company commander,
And he said no.
and he hit the ceiling. So guess what he did? I was in the 610th graves registration. And so he moved me out of there, sent me home on furlough. When I came back, the 607th graves registration was readying to go overseas, and they were short one guy. I was a replacement. I got on that ship. All the guys were older than I was. They're all kidding me. Don't worry, Champa, they're going to turn the ship around and take you home. Roosevelt said, no 18-year-olds will set foot on foreign soil. That's in a speech. And so I got kidded quite a bit. So now I was part of the 607th. And they broke up our company into 4 platoons and headquarters, 124 guys altogether. And they sent us to Bristol. And the other guys went to different places. Now I want to tell you something. My first escape with death. You ever hear about Exercise Tiger? A German E-boat stationed in Cherbourg, France, torpedoed, sunk 3 of the 4, 800 guys. We lost 18 of our guys, first lieutenant, first sergeant, all the non-com commissioned officers.
Oh, shit.
And they were all killed except 6 privates. But anyway, if they had selected my platoon, I wouldn't be here talking to you now. That was my first escape with death. Second escape was on a ship going to Normandy. We're down in a hold. You know what a hold is, where we keep equipment. No. We're sleeping down there the night of the 5th. And in the middle of the night, there was a huge explosion. Our ship just rocked like crazy. We all scampered up on deck and found out what happened. There was a Navy gunner that shot down a torpedo plane. That was the explosion. That Navy gunner was 19. I had met him during the day, found out his name, what he did, took me into his quarters to show me where he lived in the galley and all that. Dennis Reed from Ohio. If he didn't shoot that guy down, I wouldn't be here now. We did hit a mine cable, but that was no big deal. The ship just rocked a little bit. I wore Mae West Life Preserver and a belt, both. I couldn't swim, and I didn't want to take any chances. Not that swimming did you any good over there, and I'll tell you why. Because when we finally landed there, amongst, I've heard 4,000 ships. That's what the LA Times said in their headline. In fact, I have that plaque on my wall in my office. 5,000 ships. They say 4,000. Whatever it was, 4,000 or 5,000 ships. There were a lot of ships out there. We were anchored, when we got there, broadside to shore. And I thought how stupid that was, because we was a big target. And they were shooting the 88s, the artillery, hitting ships all over the place. Saw a tanker blow up, bodies in the water, debris in the water. We all got on the standing next to the bulkhead opposite shore, hopefully get some protection if his ship got hit. So the ship was listing in the water like this. I don't know how long I did that, seemed like days, but I don't know how long, maybe an hour or 2, I don't know. All I know is I knew there was a war on. And so anyway, now it was our turn to go down a rope ladder. Did we practice a rope ladder? No. Did guys fall off and drown? Yes. So I got in a rope ladder, and look, I'm scared to death. And I get in that, I think I was sitting in a Jeep. Going in, the artillery's, we could hear it going over it. We could see ships getting hit all around us. Started to go, went in, turned around, came out. Went in again, turned around, came out. I figured it was because the guy driving that thing thought we were going to get hit. Well, I blacked out from fear. I don't actually remember the landing. But one of our first jobs, our job was to clear the beach of the dead, pick up the dead on the beach, pick up the paratroopers that landed in the channel in error, that drowned because their parachutes came down over them and all their gear on, they drowned. So we picked up those guys, and we picked up guys on the beach. And we had black service troops digging the graves. Then when we got the prisoners, they were digging the graves. And then we had prisoners the rest of the war digging graves. And they thought they were, in Normandy, they thought they were digging.
They had the black soldiers digging graves. Didn't mention any other type of soldiers except for the POWs.
Digging their own grave. And these guys would say, oh, me Czech, me Polski, me this. And they were telling the truth because, the Germans conscripted a lot of guys in the countries that they took over, and they had to go in the German army or else. We buried them with one dog tag on their body in the dirt, 6 feet down, and one on a wood marker. I handled bodies 18, 19, 20. I broke down about 2 weeks after. In Normandy, you had a stench of death in your clothes that you slept in. You're spitting all the time. Some guys chew tobacco. Some guys got their hands on liquor somehow. But we did that every day for 11 months, except one day in Paris. That was like the end of the war. That was a break. Other than that, seeing bodies every day. And when you're seeing bodies every day, like your age, and you look at the condition that many of them are in, you don't forget that. And then we left Normandy. The last cemetery we had there was in St. Lo. But that's when I saw the Patton come through with his tanks, because they landed at Cherbourg, the port. And boy, it was great seeing them. And while we were there, the 8th Air Force, and not to condemn them, but in their bombs, they killed General McNair. We picked up his body. I didn't personally, but we did. So anyway, from St. Lo, we went to Paris. So Paris was liberated in August 44, and so we were there we went when all the action was going on. People with flowers, and it was like the war ended. And we were in this little town called Solaires, about 40 miles south of Paris. So we had a temporary cemetery there. And then from there, we went to Belgium. And we went through Charleroi, and went through Namur, and we had a cemetery called Fosse, F-O-S-S-E-S, temporary cemetery there. That temporary cemetery is no longer there, I don't think. So we left there, and we went to Henri Chapelle. Almost had a little... Henri Chapelle. Henri Chapelle
grandfather
is the second largest cemetery over there. Actually, Normandy is not the largest. The largest was Saint-Avold, which is just inside France from Germany. That was the largest, and Henri Chapelle was about the third largest. When we left Henri Chapelle, temporary cemetery, we had 17,300 buried there. We went into Germany from there. When the war ended, the cemetery we had at Eisenach, Germany, those bodies are only buried there for maybe a month or so.
Yeah, because we don't bury.
And we had to re-identify
bodies on
those bodies that would be disinterred and re-identified.
We don't bury bodies on soil of countries we were in combat with. If I remember right. That's why they have all the cemeteries around Germany, but not in Germany.
Identified by looking at the dog tag. They're buried in mattress covers, and bodies are already decomposed. Maggots all over them, terrible stench. And put them in boxes, and they were shipped to Belgium or Holland to be buried again in a temporary cemetery, in the dirt again. They didn't get in a casket until 2 years after the war, which was 1947. And at that time, the next of kin had a prerogative of having the remains sent home to any cemetery they wanted at no cost to them, or remain there. The ones that they're looking in those permanent cemeteries, they figure that's all that was killed. No, that's 40% of what was killed. The other 60% were sent home when the next of kin, as I said, requests a cemetery for them to be sent to. They're put in lined caskets, just like the guys are put in now, except the guys now getting killed. They're embalmed and they're put in their uniforms and they're sent home so the next kid can actually see the body. But with us, it's just bones, so that's all they get. What I talk about is understanding the high price of freedom. And the only way you could really understand it is doing what I and other guys like me and even the medics, what we did in my company, we buried 75,000. That's not just Americans. We handled the Germans dead too. We put them in separate temporary cemeteries. You got to see it. And then you understand the high price of freedom. Other than that, it's just a term.
All right, so this next one is actually the museum that's located at the cemetery. Well, I guess not the largest one, but the one where President Biden was speaking. It's a really interesting museum. And then the cemetery is right outside. And like, man, I walk down the cliff now they have. There's a path. Man, imagine just looking up that cliff. Just imagine. Then you got the German machine gunners just murdering or killing people. It was a huge cliff, but in reality, it really wasn't. It's just weird. But anyway, I was glad to have that experience because probably never would or never will again.
Hi, I'm Chris.
Hi, I'm Joseph Tingley. Welcome to the National World War II Museum.
Oh, this place is amazing. Thanks for having me. So tell me a little bit about the museum.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were founded in 2000 as the National D-Day Museum. We actually opened on June 6th.
That's not
D-Day.
Yep, D-Day. So we opened up as the National D-Day Museum. As you may have...
Sometimes they say, well, I don't know what to ask.
Building together new Jeeps. We know it through the works.
No.
So this is really a war that kind of touches every corner. Even China, Burma, and India, you have...
Fucking idiot. Anyway, yeah. That's history lesson for today. And that's what it's like from the view of people that are actually on the beach, as opposed to a documentary that YouTube didn't want me to show. But it's okay, YouTube. I got you. I understand. But yeah, today's more about the men and women that served on that day that passed or are still alive. Not about fucking Ukraine, Joe Biden. You sorry sack of shit. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, not telling you how to think. That was just the thoughts of the actual, survivors of the day, the D-Day, June 6, 1944. I believe that's the day we'll always live in infamy, or is that Pearl Harbor? Hold on. Boy, I'm fat fingering the hell out of this. Oh, that's December 7th. What? Oh, that's fucking Pearl Harbor. My bad. I'm an idiot. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, I was right in the first time. I don't know why I kept saying it. Hope you have a good day, and history is a hell of a drug.